I'm here with Glynis Rankin, who is the president and founder of Creative Métier. And Glynis and her team did some work for us for the summit in Mexico. Glynis, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about Creative Métier, the work that you do, and then the research you did for the Mexico summit.
Sure. So in Creative Métier, we work with organisations to help them to deliver the capacity to deliver on their strategic objectives. So that includes organisation development and strategic HR, executive coaching and mentoring, and leadership development programs. And we're really concerned across the industry to support institutions and networks to really develop that capacity and that capacity to innovate for the future of the industry. So in advance of the 2014 Microcredit Summit, thinking about Generation Next, we interviewed industry leaders to understand their perspective on leadership qualities, the challenges they face, the importance of developing the future generation of leaders. So how really to develop that next generation, and then thinking also about diversity of leadership and the ways that those leaders can support that next generation.
So tell me the range of leaders you interviewed. Were you looking for specific types of leaders, or did you try to get a cross-section?
Yeah, we tried to get a cross-section, and what we were thinking about when we started and designed the study was we were thinking about industry founders. So those leaders who were have been working in the industry for many, many years, perhaps set up organisations or networks themselves, but really were the visionaries at the start of the industry, and might be thinking about microfinance more widely. And then we also looked at organisation builders, so those are leaders who'd come in perhaps a little later and had really built and strengthened organisations once they had already been founded. We looked at innovators, so those people who had really brought about profound innovation, so really profound and significant change across the industry, and young leaders who were those up-and-coming leaders who we imagined would be the leaders for the future in the longer term. So those younger leaders were sort of age 20 to 30, that age range. We looked at what the key issues were, so what the challenges were, what they felt the qualities of strong leaders were, how they would develop and support future leaders. We asked them questions about diversity and really thinking about how to strengthen institutions going forward, and then this question of how would they work to develop leaders for the future. What did they think the industry should do to support?
Right, good. So any surprises with talking with all?
Well, I think in terms of surprises, I suppose, not surprises, but I think really clear articulation around some of these themes. And I think our framework that we developed originally in these 4 areas was not the results didn't come out exactly as we'd anticipated, in the sense that they didn't fall into those categories. And what we realised as we were doing that research is that in a way, the way we'd set the categories was more a reflection, or partly a reflection, of different generations of leadership. So as somebody goes through their own leadership cycle and their own leadership development, they would be going through these phases. Obviously, some of us may be innovators and some not, but in terms of different phases of life cycle of a leader, that was a more helpful way perhaps to look at it. And I suppose the other thing was the reflection on how the industry has changed. So in a sense, the founders, industry founders and organisation builders were articulating a very commonly shared, understood, coherent thinking about the industry, thinking about the leadership qualities across the group. Not that everybody had the same views, of course, but there was a real coherence. When we came to the innovators and the younger leaders, there were many different and diverse perspectives. And as one would expect, as the sort of whole thinking broadens out to financial inclusion, there was that sort of slight difference. And also, I suppose that also is perhaps a reflection of the roles that people are playing at earlier stages in their career. and their knowledge of the breadth of the industry at that stage in their career as well. So perhaps not a surprise, but, you know, an observation about the different perspectives at those different stages.
And so what are some of the highlights that you heard, or the common messages coming out from these interviews?
Well, in terms of qualities across the whole group, they were very similar. So the first one was persistence and resilience, and the ability to really stick with something no matter what happens. The second common theme was humility, and so that being open to listen to others, take in others' perspectives, listen and learn. Accountability, so being accountable to clients and to the organisation. So actually there was that dual accountability to staff, to building the organisation, to the sustainability of the organisation in order to meet the needs of clients. Integrity, so a really strong sense of ethics and values. Collaboration, so being willing to collaborate across the sector, no sense of competition, but really, you know, serving a higher purpose here. And then the ability to constantly change and innovate, to take into account new ways of doing things, to motivate, empower and recognise others. So both managing and building a strong team, but also building that leadership as a whole in the organisation for the future. Thinking strategically, so seeing the industry as a whole, or the country as a whole, or the need for that bigger picture to situate leadership. And then engaging with diverse stakeholders, and at the same time to engage stakeholders in the whole strategy and mission that the individual leader was pursuing, or their organisation was pursuing.
A lot of what you talked about also seemed to be putting clients at the center, understanding the needs of clients, and the innovation and work in developing new products and services are designed around a deep understanding of clients' needs and desires. How do organizations actually do that? Did you come across good examples of how organizations develop this understanding of clients and made that part of their DNA?
Yeah. So there were quite there was a slight generational difference here, although I don't think it was only a generational difference, which was traditionally for, you know, many leaders in microfinance and indeed many institutions today, that knowledge and understanding of the client's needs has come through sitting with and listening to clients. So knowing clients, understanding their lives, knowing what their needs are, through that careful one-to-one loan officer relationships, and also more senior members of the institution also going out, sitting with clients and listening and understanding. And so that has built obviously a vast body of experience, and that building of relationships. And then from that, then in some institutions, then obviously for some purely microfinance, but others providing other services, not just financial services, that meet the needs of those clients. So really committing to the whole life of those clients, and often gathering information that's much broader than the financial information.
You also asked questions about diversity, and looking at diversity in terms of clients served and stakeholders involved, people that are the institution might interact with, as well as diversity within the leadership with the organization. So what did these leaders say about how they saw diversity and the need for diversity in their own organizations?
Firstly, they saw it as essential, and they saw it as essential in senior leadership, and they saw it as essential in a number of different ways. So partly because if you have diversity of thought, then that challenges the taken for granted ways of doing things, so much more likely to be innovative. And then partly in relation to reflecting the diversity of the client groups. So that might be gender diversity or ethnic diversity or many sorts of diversity, but that actually, if you've got that thinking in the senior teams and in your staff as a whole, stay in touch with their needs and requirements that represents those groups that you're serving, then you're much more likely to meet those needs. So then I think another aspect of that was the sort of concerns, I suppose, about as the industry has evolved and grown, and particularly with the move to delivery of full service banking as opposed to the NGO to full service bank sort of transition, that the number of women in senior leadership roles seems to have reduced or be reducing across the industry. And therefore there was concern about that trend really, and really a need to maintain where an institution is serving primarily women clients.
How do leaders today, what did you learn from them about what they can do to develop the leaders for tomorrow that can continue the mission but do so in a way that's appropriate for the context that they will be leading?
So if we think about the younger leaders first in answer to that question, those younger leaders had a slightly different type of relationship with clients in a way. So some were gathering the information, as we said before, but some were still sitting with clients, but they had a much more informal sort of relationship, in the sense that clients were just more other friends. They were people they knew. So they were sitting next to them in a different sort of way than perhaps, our industry founders were talking about it, using a different language to describe it. So they were part of their network in a way, and the networking and the sort of matrix type organisations and the fluidity of the way organisations are now, relationships with people are now, was very evident in those conversations. Strong leaders who really developed their staff were listening to the needs of those staff, and they were listening to the perspectives of those staff, and they were providing staff with opportunities to learn and grow. These leaders really demonstrated, in the group as a whole, was that they're role modelling what they're saying. So, if we talk about visionary leadership, we talk about listening to others, that's what they're doing themselves.
Yep.
And so in that sense, they are role models. And so that leadership development that they're exemplifying it themselves, and then they're encouraging that within their organisation.
So where does this research go from here? You've learned a lot of fascinating things from some industry leaders. How do you take this forward?
Well, we felt very privileged to do this work, and the people we spoke to were very generous in terms of their time and their sharing, really openly sharing their learning. So what we've done, Larry, is we've pulled together from each of the interviews a summary, a one-page summary, which is really extracting the nuggets, the real insights from each interview, and we will be publishing those on the Microcredit Summit website monthly from now on. So that will start fairly soon, and that's really how we would like to move this forward. And so everybody will be able to read and benefit from seeing these perspectives, because I've summarised them, but of course each one is very different. And so that, I think, will be hugely valuable and useful.